Hey, welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a story that you probably think you know inside and out, the feeding of the 5,000. But what if there's way more to it than just an incredible miracle? We're going to peel back the layers of this event using the analysis of theologian Harold Wilmington to see why this impossible meal is so much more important than it looks on the surface. So, to really get a handle on just how massive this event was, let's start with the number you always hear, 5,000. But here's the kicker. That number, it only counted the men. When you start to factor in the women and children who were also there, some people think the crowd was actually closer to 20,000. That's basically a stadium-sized audience, all gathered together in the middle of nowhere. And what did they have to feed this giant crowd? Well, this is where the picture gets almost comical. It's so extreme. All they could find were 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish that they got from a little boy. I mean, just look at that equation. You have a hungry multitude on one side and a lunch that would barely feed a single family on the other. It's an impossible situation. And that, of course, brings us to the question that's been asked for centuries. How in the world is that even possible? This question is the absolute heart of the miracle. And to really understand the answer, we have to look a little deeper than just the event itself. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the meal itself. Then we'll get into why this miracle is so unique compared to the others. From there, we'll look at the story through this really cool lens of the Good Shepherd. Then we'll talk about the crowd's, well, their surprising reaction. And finally, we'll wrap up with the 5 big reasons this all happened in the first place. All right, first up, the meal. The scene is set for something truly one of a kind. Jesus takes this tiny offering, blesses it, and somehow it multiplies. It just keeps multiplying until every single person has eaten their fill. But it doesn't even stop there. After everyone is full, they go around and collect 12 full baskets of leftovers. It's just a mind-blowing act of impossible abundance. So why does this miracle get so much airtime? I mean, Jesus performed a lot of miracles, right? But this one has a few key things going on that make it totally stand out from all the rest. So what makes it so special? Well, for starters, it's the only miracle that's reported by all 4 gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's a big deal. It also involved way more people than any other miracle. And get this, it's the only time someone from the crowd, that little boy, actually contributed to what was about to happen. This event also led to the only time people tried to literally force Jesus to be a king. And finally, it's totally unique in how Jesus involved his disciples. First, by questioning them, and then by having them serve the food to the people. Now, this miracle wasn't just about handing out a free lunch, no way. According to Wilmington's analysis, it was this incredible living demonstration of a huge theme from the scriptures, Jesus acting as the Good Shepherd. So let's unpack that powerful metaphor because it's really the key to the whole thing. You see, this idea of a divine shepherd feeding his flock, it wasn't new. In fact, this miracle is seen as a direct fulfillment of old prophecies, like this one right here from Ezekiel. It promised that God himself would come as a shepherd to find his people and feed them. So the miracle isn't just a miracle, it's a promise being kept right before their eyes. This analysis breaks down his actions into 4 distinct roles. First, he was the sensitive shepherd. He knew the people needed teaching and healing, but he also knew they were hungry. Second, the systematic shepherd. Instead of chaos, he brought order, having everyone sit in organized groups. Third, he was the sovereign shepherd, the one who could take that tiny meal and supernaturally multiply it. And last, the sufficient shepherd, who didn't just provide enough, but provided more than enough, with those 12 baskets left over as proof. Okay, but here's where the story takes a really interesting, kind of sad twist. You'd think that after seeing something this incredible, everyone would get the message, right? Well, the crowd's reaction shows they kind of miss the point, which adds a whole new layer to the story. The very next day, Jesus confronts the crowd, and his words, right here from the Gospel of John, are incredibly direct. He basically says, you're not looking for me because you understood the signs, you're looking for me because you got a free lunch and you're full. He just cuts right to the heart of it. They were focused on their stomachs, not the spiritual reality of what they'd just seen. Their mistake really came down to 2 things. First, they had the wrong motive. They were chasing after physical food that goes bad instead of the spiritual truth that lasts forever. And second, they had the wrong method. They saw a guy who could magically make food and they thought, let's make him king. They tried to force a crown on him, completely missing that his path wasn't to a throne, but to a cross. So, if the point wasn't just to feed people, and it wasn't to become some kind of political king, then what was the ultimate purpose here? Well, that brings us to our final section, the 5 key reasons this whole spectacular event even happened. According to this analysis, it all boils down to 5 core reasons. First, to demonstrate compassion, to show he cared about people's physical hunger just as much as their spiritual needs. Second, to test his disciples, giving them a hands-on, unforgettable lesson in faith. Third, to prove his messianic claims, fulfilling that old expectation that the Messiah would provide bread from heaven. Fourth, to show the value of small things, how a small, humble gift can be magnified into something incredible. And finally, to illustrate God's faithfulness, serving as this powerful, real-life example of the principle to seek God's kingdom first, and everything else will follow. And all of that brings us right here to our final thought. The feeding of the 5,000 was an absolute spectacle, no doubt about it. But what this analysis shows us is that the spectacle was never actually the main point. And it leaves us with a much bigger question to think about. Beyond the shock and awe, what is the true purpose of a miracle? This story seems to suggest that the answer isn't just in what happened, but in the much deeper meaning of why it happened. Thanks for joining us.